Now, President Donald Trump just came out with a dire warning to America, and it's putting chills down the spines of many Americans who can't believe what they just saw. Now, before we get into the story, please like, share, and comment at the Becker Brief. We always appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Now, President Donald Trump was once again at a press conference. Talk about transparency. He is much more accessible than the former decrepit president, or you could call him puppet-in-chief, Joe Biden. He has been answering a lot of hard questions, many more than the previous president. And so he was asked at a press conference by a reporter at NTD News. Her name is Iris Tao. She was born in China, and she knows very well the horrors of communism and what it's like when a radical organization like the CCP or the PLA, People's Liberation Army, when they get in power, people lose their rights. They are put under the heel of communists, and things get really bad very fast. And President Donald Trump was asked about this, and he had a chilling warning for Americans. You got to watch this.
Thank you, Mr. President, for doing this. Iris Tao with NTD, with a sister media with the Epoch Times.
Okay.
On communism, you've been issuing a wake-up call to Americans at home about the dangers of communism. And now you're speaking on the world stage. What's your message to people both living under communist and socialist regimes, but also people living under democracies like in Europe and America who might not have realized how close communism has come to home?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. But look, I want to get the word out because what's forming is communism in the country. And communism's easy to sell. I would be the greatest communist in history. I'd be right up there with Lenin. I'd be as good as anybody. You've got free rent for the rest of your life. What they don't say is that you'll be living in squalor in 12 months. You've got a free house. Would anybody like to have a free house? We'll take it away from somebody. We'll give it to you. You'll have murders all over the place. Communism's a disaster. It's been proven to be for thousands of years under different names, but same thing. It's very important. And, you know, it's funny. One of the reasons I do so well with Hispanic people, I set a record, Republicans. I get great numbers for the election, helped me get elected in a landslide, the Hispanics, because a lot of them came from countries that were essentially communist. You know, whether you call them radical socialist or communist is not that much, but there's a little difference. When they say social democrats, we're social democrats, it sounds so nice. It's not nice, it's a very dangerous term. So I do talk about it, and I talk about it on TikTok, and I talk about it everywhere. I talk about it here. And you're right, it has become international, but it's never worked, and it's not going to work. What is working is the United States. So think of it, we have more jobs than we've ever had. People are making more money than they've ever made. I'm talking about workers now. I'm talking about workers. They're making higher salaries than they've ever made before. It's just the best system, and it's got flaws, but everything's going to have a little flaw, but it's been amazing. And when I watch what's happening and I see these lowlifes getting, I mean, they're lowlifes. I watch them. I know good people. I know quality people. These are essentially lowlifes. And when I see what they're talking, I think they're very dangerous in many ways. And I've said it. And then I said, boy, that's a pretty big statement. Then I realized, you know, a couple of people said, I think you're probably right. I think this country, with this thing that's going around, is in more danger than it was during World War I, World War II. If you talk about September 11th, if you talk about Pearl Harbor, that was big danger. I think the concept of us going communist, because one thing that happens when you go communist, you never come back, never comes back. You die in squalor. You die a horrible death. You die in squalor, and it gets very evil and very nasty.
Now, Donald Trump is absolutely spot on with his warning about communists. It drives countries into poverty, misery, and sometimes mass murder. This is the harrowing sweep of communist history. We're talking about 100 million people executed under socialist and communist regimes of various types, including National Socialism, which nationalized the economy in Germany and put everything under totalitarian rule of the fascists in that country. Also in Italy, the fascists rose to power. Benito Mussolini, he wasn't just a nationalist, but before that he was a socialist So there has been a long track record. It is virtually indisputable. But the Democratic Party in America has been penetrated thoroughly by socialists, including the so-called Democratic Socialists of America.
Well, Mehek, the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, their platform is calling for some reforms that are really out there. It includes the adoption of a new constitution, allowing non-citizens to vote, a 32-hour work week with, quote, no reduction in pay or benefits, replacing the two-party system, limiting the power of the Supreme Court, and completely ending deportations. And it actually looks like more people are signing on to that extreme agenda. The group announced this week it now tops 120,000 members, declaring itself the largest socialist organization in U.S. history. Mehek, how are Republicans watching this?
Well, Bill, there's no doubt that the DSA is gaining steam and it's moving. And this is where the Republicans really have an opportunity. Look, the DSA actually creeped in and is taking over the Democrat Party because the Democrats never learned from their autopsy and never actually had solutions for the American people except for TDS and get Trump. Where Republicans can really step in is deliver on the promises that were made, safe and secure elections, increased and continued deportations. And this is where the DSA does not know how to respond because they want to defund ICE. How can you defund ICE if every American, we're looking at 9 out of 10 Americans, want to make sure deportations of illegal aliens continue? So this extreme agenda will not work, but it will be a reckoning in Congress and the Senate, Bill, because the DSA is gaining steam. And remember, you just need a handful of candidates to completely stop an agenda. Just ask what's happening to Republicans today as a couple holdouts have stopped the Save America Act and so much more. So I think Republicans need to get smarter this election cycle and start delivering.
Well, democracy is just a means to an end. Just like everything else that the Marxists believe, it's all a means to an end of power, and they're willing to lie, cheat, steal, commit fraud, and even worse, when they get complete power, and they are willing to do this in order to get a stranglehold on the political power and implement a totalitarian regime. Now, we are seeing it creep again in the United States of America. And we were reassured that the Cold War was over, that communists lost, and the Soviet Union dissolved formally, and China reformed under Deng Xiaoping. But guess what? Communists are still there. They are taking a lot of territory in their long march through the institutions, and now they've captured America's biggest cities. I want you to think about that. Karen Bass in Los Angeles, she's the mayor, and she is favored to win in the runoff. Guess what? She was a Castro sympathizer, and this is documented going back to the 80s. We have Katie Wilson in Seattle, who is a left-wing ideologue. We have Brandon Johnson in Chicago, and Michelle Wu in Boston, DSA backed, and the granddaddy of them all, Zoran Mamdani, a Ugandan-born Islamo-communist who's running New York City. Now, an interesting thing about Mamdani, he's doing what a lot of communists do, and that's erase history and replace it. And you might be familiar with the Orwell quote about the party replacing history. And this is a very disturbing thing because he says that the immigrants who came to New York, well, here are all the enclaves of them. And guess who's missing? Well, it's the Irish immigrants who built a lot of the infrastructure of New York City, from Hell's Kitchen. And also Little Italy is not even on this chart. So diversity doesn't count when it comes to Western civilization. I want you to really take that to heart, because the Europeans who came here, they were diverse. There were Protestants, there were Catholics of different varieties, Roman Catholic, of course, Irish Catholic, evangelical. There's a lot of different varieties of Christianity within European civilization, and that has been obscured. And so now we are getting a different kind of diversity where our cities are being taken over by foreigners from third world countries who come in and loot our treasury. They are invading our culture and they are dragging it down. So now we are seeing like the literacy rates plummet. We're seeing our welfare expenditures on foreign-born individuals skyrocket, I think well over half, according to 2024 statistics, approximately 61%. So the Cloward and Piven strategy of overwhelming the system is starting to work. Inflation is going up. The affordability crisis is worsening. And so what the false promise of socialism is, and I want you to all realize they're the ones who caused all these problems to begin with, intentionally, is that all you have to do is trade your economic freedom, your lifestyle, your social freedom, your ability to have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. You trade everything to the state just to be given some table scraps, some social welfare benefits. You know what? Prisoners and slaves had the same type of rights, okay? The right to exist as long as you're not an issue for the Marxists in the government. So, you know, they're really starting to gain ground, and this is a dire warning. It's much needed, so please share this. President Trump is right to call it out, and we always appreciate your support at the Becker Brief.